A petition reaching nearly 160,000 signatures at the time of this recording. Japan now sanctioning Visa after the move. Several gaming, YouTube, and Rumble channels of all political leanings now calling foul the action. Everything in between. Name them and you have probably seen it. The actions that payment processor gateways Visa and MasterCard have done in the wake of pressure by conservative feminist activist group Collective Shout, yes, they have now claimed responsibility for all of this, where they forced the hands of both Steam and itch.io to remove adult-oriented material from their platforms. Keep in mind that it was their definitions of what was considered adult-oriented. More on that in a moment. But you probably are seeing it. For the first time in a long time, unless you count the people who are whining about Critical Drinker existing for the millionth time, gamers are united in a bipartisan effort to inform the world about Collective Shout on how they operate and what the effort really is about. Savvy did a complete expose about what they were and are and how they operate. They operate as if they just say things to get attention. The ultimate trolls and ultimate grifters. They were for the controversial Netflix docufilm Cuties after they were against it. Or is that vice versa? No one can tell anymore because their views are all over the map. The thing that we know is true is that they sent a petition of what they claim were 1,000+ signatures to payment gateways in an attempt to paint Steam and itch.io as being platforms that sold quote-unquote illegal content. A vast net that can include anything that they wanted it to be cast upon. Slippery slope? Try falling down a cliff. We all know this was a Trojan horse of an ask. AO games today, GTA 6 tomorrow. And before you say that is little more than an accusation, they have targeted GTA 5 before. Remember what happened in 2016 to the game in Kmart's and Targets that Collective Shout's home country of Australia? Yes, I spoiled it. That was them that did that. Those are the same people that have now wrote to the payment processors and got what they wanted by hook or crook. But in the process, they all did the one thing that no one thought they would be able to do, and no one is able to do up to this point. Unite the gaming front. You know the meme of everyone disliked that? Well, that's what the result of what these processors did. They did something that everyone disliked. Seriously, who was even asked to have two multi-million-dollar conglomerates be able to dictate what we can and cannot do with the money we earn? Who wanted Visa and MasterCard to tell us that we are not allowed to buy that mature-rated game if we wanted to, like we were 5 years old? Who wanted such a draconian police state-like mindset to take hold? For that matter, who was asking for the idea of the UK being able to ask for your personal information down to your firstborn kid to access a site that might contain inappropriate material. Inappropriate in quotes because we all know that would be up to them to determine what platforms include inappropriate material or what they consider to be inappropriate. No sane, reasonably thinking person likes this. They are all telling Visa and MasterCard to stop with the nanny state and telling Collective Shout to basically get lost. But here's the thing, while MasterCard seems to be at least acknowledging that they are getting these comments every day and haven't really said anything one way or another yet, Visa has, and it seems they are trying to have it both ways in what seems to be an auto reply, saying, quote, "Thank you for reaching out and sharing your perspective. As a global company, we follow the laws and regulations everywhere we do business. While we explicitly prohibit illegal activity on our network, we are equally committed to protecting legal commerce. If a transaction is legal, our policy is to process a transaction. We do not make moral judgments on legal purchases made by consumers. Visa does not moderate content sold by merchants, nor do we have visibility into specific goods or services sold when we process a transaction. When a legally operating merchant faces an elevated risk of illegal activity, we require enhanced safeguards for the banks supporting those merchants." Elevated risk? What does that even mean? This is Visa talking out of both sides of their mouth. How they can possibly know if an elevated risk exists unless they were either monitoring your transactions, scary thought in of itself, or they felt pressured into making an action. In this case, Collective Shout seemed to know what they were doing. Instead of saying that one or two games featured on the platform were causing the issue, it was the platform itself that was the problem. It's not just the devs that were responsible for placing that offended game on the platform, but Steam and itch.io were the ones that were posting it themselves, as if they made the game. The platform itself is dangerous, even when Steam has an option to filter out adults-only rated games, and that option is easy to find. And the act itself was a moral judgment, because Collective Shout said that the content was quote-unquote illegal. How? What was illegal about it? CS never specified what was illegal about the content they felt was inappropriate and targeted. Yet, despite no one outside of this group asking for this, Visa and MasterCard went ahead with this move anyway. And despite sanctions by the Japanese Fair Trade Commission against Visa, they put out this email that just muddies the water more. This is not them protecting anyone. It's them being anti-consumer. No one is affected by someone across the country or across the pond if they wanted to buy a game like No Mercy or any other game that someone may cry foul at. If we don't like the game being sold, there is a simpler solution. Vote with your wallet. No one was holding a gun to their head telling them that they had to buy those games. These companies and groups, though, shot first and asked later about those games. Even if you do not agree about the games that were on the storefront, if your personal liberties and rights were not affected or violated by what I or anybody else purchased, then why should it matter if the game was on the storefront? These digital storefronts are not like brick and mortar physical stores. They have far more space for content than any physical store would. There should be no competition as to what gets on or not on the platform in this sense. In a brick and mortar store, stocking No Mercy, for instance, would mean a spot on that shelf that another game would deserve more would not get it. But on a digital storefront, both the inappropriate game and the more deserving game can coexist at the same time. Now, we can debate how much digital space these storefronts do have, but a brick and mortar store cannot compete even factoring that in. Further proof as to why this move makes no sense. And like I said, let's not kid ourselves about how much of a slippery slope this is. I talk about the Simpsons episode Marge vs. Itchy and Scratchy all the time, where Marge broke from the mob who was with her about the violence in Itchy and Scratchy when they then applied that same logic to Michelangelo's David, which she considered a valued piece of art. Think of the cartoon in that episode being games like No Mercy and games like GTA, Tomb Raider, Doom, and other M-rated games. Yes, they might go after violence as well as sexual content as Michelangelo's David. Collective Shout is using the AO games to say, hey, if you were against that, you should also be against this, with the this being the M-rated games like GTA or Tomb Raider, and any other game that has even a hint of something they deem inappropriate. And if you're not against GTA being banned or any of those other games, then they will say you were never on their side and were actually for those AO games being on the platform all along. They want you to not only go down that slippery slope with them, but they want to find what part of that slope is the most slippery part, go down it, and a bottomless pit awaits you at the base of that slope with no way to climb back up, and them asking you to drop down that bottomless pit with them gladly. This is why I feel like there's more to this story, and I wonder if there's another party in play. We've already seen the overreach the UK government is seemingly willing to do. Also, despite an outcry of people who are against it, UK government seems to not care about how unpopular their actions are. But to have an Australian conservative feminist group come from seemingly under the radar, seemingly from out of nowhere, with no one knowing they even existed, and in the span of a few months have this much pull, this much reach, and this much influence that it can result in something that affects everyone worldwide, and despite the inflammatory words they use on their detractors, like misgendering savvy, and try to scrub clean their ex-history and how conservatives are viewed in the eyes of these companies for the longest time, they refuse to budge? No, I don't buy that. I cannot buy that there isn't something nefarious going on here. So much has been uncovered about this group that anyone with a brain would stay away. No liberal, libertarian, conservative, or anybody in between would want to be within 10 miles of this group. In other words, either someone is lying about the influence this group actually has, and this was the gateways finding a reason to do what they always wanted to do, and if that's the case, then these gateways hold way too much power and need to be dealt with through legal means, or there's a middleman we know nothing about yet. Someone on these boards that is also a member of Collective Shout, or CS has an ally somewhere else in the world, and they might have someone on the inside. Maybe someone CS or who's allied with them holds stock in these companies. Something, because it seems all the outcry to reverse course on these actions from just about everyone is getting completely ignored. While it makes sense given that Visa or MasterCard are the only payment options the majority have to pick from because we've seen cryptocurrencies being attacked by this very same type of smear merchants, the fact that it could make sense for that reason is the main problem. These companies don't have to listen to anyone because who will you go to when they are the only options in town? And they have scared you away from the other options with so much lies and deceit that no one seems willing to just check to make sure that what they said about the other options were true. What I would like to see is an investigation done into Collective Shout itself. See if they have any other ties to any of these companies. Do they have shareholders in place at Visa or MasterCard? Who are their friends and allies, and do they have any connections? Is there nepotism at play here? How far down does the rabbit hole go? I am not convinced that there isn't some conspiracy going on. How else can you describe this double talk from everyone involved that is responsible for these decisions? We need answers. This could be a 3.0 and a certain thing that has the initials GG. I don't mean good game. Maybe something else that the smear merchants have vilified to make sure that people didn't have or gain any power, just like why they believe we don't have any here. Thank you for listening. Please leave your comments down below, and please look after yourselves. Until next time, to be continued.